So Shweta is a QA professional with over 12 years of experience in Agile environments. At Axelerant, she leads the entire QA team and her work responsibilities involve onboarding new joiners, training them in the Drupal admin interface. Shweta would be speaking on overcoming the impostor to become a successful test automation engineer. And if you want to know more about Shweta, you can go on Selenium Summit website and then you can see the speaker profile. And I personally heard multiple times Shweta, so it is going to be a great session. So Shweta, welcome you.
Thank you, Abhay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, welcome all, and thanks, Abhay, for that wonderful introduction. And I work as the director of QA services at Axelerant. I have been working with Axelerant for over 6 years now, and overall, you can say I have 13 years of industry experience, all in QA, by the way. And I reside in Pune. So just a spoiler or probably just an alert, if you are already into test automation and if you already do it in some capacity, probably you might not find this session that useful since you have already dived into it. But this session is certainly going to be useful to people, we can say functional testers, manual testers, right? Testers who test the application and contribute to quality, but not in an automated fashion. So this session is certainly going to help you overcome that fear. And I'm not going to talk about any technical aspects of test automation really, because there are tons of tutorials and good tutorials out there in the market. You know that, right? It's mainly going to be about, breaking that imposter syndrome for you to take that first step and get started with your automation journey. And I had mentioned this on LinkedIn as well, that this is something that I've personally been experiencing, and I have mentored many people at Axelerant to overcome the aversion towards test automation in general, and that includes developers as well. You might not believe it. Yes, that includes developers as well. This is going to be our agenda, and I'll try to cover all the points as much as possible. This is such a deep topic, but I'll try to cover it. I don't know if you all have heard of all of these terms, or probably you all are not clear on the definition of it. But usually what I see is, automation is such a broad term that is used in general. Obviously, there is context involved. But let me tell you that when you use the term automation, it also means a lot of other things. Right. So automation, if you talk broadly about automation, and these definitions have been picked up from Wikipedia, which I relate to, hence I have just pasted it. Automation describes a wide range of technologies which reduce human intervention in process. That need not really be related just to software or testing software, right? This is like an example could be like home automation systems that are there already, right? Wherein probably when everybody goes out of the house, the lights are automatically turned off. That's what automation is, right? Talking about automation testing, what I feel is when you use the term automation testing, it means that you are actually testing the automation systems, right? Probably you're going to test the system that are built for easier human work, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean having automated tests. That testing can happen, and in fact, it should happen by humans. You're testing automation. We are not going to talk about that part as well. Software testing, I'm sure you all might be aware of what software testing is, and I'm not going to dive deep into it. What we're going to talk about really, so in this talk, or probably what generally automated testing, or when you hear the term test automation, what it means in the software industry is that it's the use of software separate from the software being tested to control the execution of tests and the comparison of actual outcomes with predicted outcomes. Now, this is an important point that you need to consider, that there has to be a predicted outcome against which you are going to compare. And that's what the test actually does. The test is not intelligent in itself. The test is going to be as intelligent as you design it to be. So understand that concept very well. Software test automation is the most exploited field currently in software testing, and hence, understanding the basics is extremely important. I think someone needs to go on mute, please. Okay, what I want you to quickly please do is go to slido.com and enter the code 7073 and quickly answer this poll. You can select multiple choices, by the way. Why do you want to learn test automation? There's a huge market demand for it. Stalled career growth, you feel you aren't progressing, and to gain respect from your peers. Now that's really an honest point. I mean, if you feel that you do not have enough respect in the industry, in your organization, in your project, just because you don't consider, or they don't consider you to be technically sound, right? Okay, that's still changing. You can select multiple choices, by the way. Okay, that's still changing. Okay. So we're going to talk about some honest points here, and that's how we're going to break the imposter. So start realizing, until and unless you start realizing the need yourself, the first point to breaking the imposter is to discuss and accept what are the points that need to be worked upon, right? And why do you really want to learn test automation here? So that's how we're going to break the imposter, by talking about it and by accepting it, right? Acceptance is the first step here to break the imposter, right? And that's why I've kept it open, wherein if you are not comfortable speaking with your name and all, you don't have to do that, right? But what this tells you is, this gives you a good idea that there are 60% people who actually want to gain respect from their peers, who feel disrespected, right? And that sort of information is kind of an eye opener for everyone else, that you are not alone in this. There are many other people who are facing the same problem. Huge market demand. Yeah. Okay, fine. I think let's move on. Okay, so we saw your reasons why you want to learn test automation, but now just move slightly ahead and let's understand the actual need to learn test automation to optimize one's testing efforts, right? Test automation, as soon as people hear the term, they connect it with CI/CD. You don't have to talk about CI/CD while you are in kindergarten, right? You don't have to talk about the board exams or the degree right away while you're still in kindergarten. You don't have to do that. In today's keynote, Mare explained it with a very good example, wherein she was kind of testing the same scenario using multiple inputs, right? And that is going to optimize your testing efforts. If there are systems in place wherein you have to test the same test case, right, using multiple inputs, automation, like having automated tests there, is certainly going to help you, and it's going to optimize your testing efforts there. So understand the actual need is that start it from yourself, right? You need to optimize your testing efforts so that you are more efficient in what you do to deliver faster and confident releases. See, while you do this, you also start delivering releases not only at a faster pace, but you're also confident, because tasks that are mundane and repetitive, right? The machine is not going to go wrong with there. Humans are bound to go wrong with those tasks, with those scenarios, but the machine is not going to go wrong there unless you have changed something in your test or the underlying system has changed, right? So you're going to deliver faster and confident releases by having automated tests. Focusing on the usability aspect. What happens is, when a lot of time of your testing goes into testing these sort of test cases, right? You're trying to break the system by trying to just load it with too many negative scenarios, but you are forgetting on the usability front. So many applications today, they are just scrapped off just because they are not usable by the end audience, by the end user, right? And So even if it is completely bug free, that system is of no use. So you have to focus on the usability aspect. Every feature you take in, you have to talk about, and you have to start looking at it from the end user's perspective to stand out from the crowd. When I mean stand out from the crowd is, I know, see, even so, if you have like say 8 to 10 years of software testing experience and not in automation, I know that you have mastered a couple of domains. You can also act as a scrum master. You can also act this, that, and this. So, I mean, why is test automation not considered in there? You have to ask that question to yourself honestly, right? And we will be asking that question in the next slide. You have to stand out from the crowd at every level. Now, there would be lakhs of people who are having scrum certification, who are having, good scrum skills, scrum master skills, who are good with domain. What happens after that, right? Now 10 years of experienced testers, there are lakhs of them possessing all same skills. What makes you stands out of those lakhs of testers who are having 10 years of experience and the other skills that you possess, right? It will always help you to stand out from the crowd, because good automation engineers, test automation engineers are still scarce today. And I can speak that out of experience because we have a senior SDET position open at Axelerant, and which has been open since 6 months now, and nobody has been able to fill it. What is holding you back? Could you please go to slido.com and, again, enter the code 7073 and honestly tell me what is holding you back to get into test automation or to even learn automated testing? Could you please, that would help me understand, and that would also help you understand. You have to ask these questions to you and answer them on your own. Okay, fear and aversion to coding. Okay, again, you can select all that is applicable to you. If both of it is applicable to you, okay. So we clearly see there is some sort of an aversion towards coding, right? And more than 50% of the audience also feels that test automation is actually complex to understand. And by the way, this is not applicable just to manual testers. 3 years ago, I worked on a project all with developers. There wasn't any test automation engineer as such, and all developers. Wherein we were like 4 developers I had, and none of them had any test automation experience, and they all gave the same reason, that they feel that test automation is complex to understand and implement. Imagine all 4 ace developers, but still not comfortable with writing automated tests. So trust me, folks, you are not alone in it. Okay, fine. So I think that's a good balance. 70 and 60. That's a good balance, right? It's not just the fear, but it's also some sort of a conception that you feel that it's complex to understand and implement. So let's look at the potential solution. Again, I'm not going to talk about any technical solution here. There are tons of tutorials available on several tools. Let's talk about the first fear that we spoke of, which is aversion to coding. So the industry has evolved. What I mean is the codeless solution, or the codeless tools that are available today with writing automated tests, has evolved tremendously. I remember when I started my career in 2007, there was just this QTP, and there was this Selenium IDE, and Selenium IDE back then was, primarily a record and playback tool, which was just not reliable, because I mean, I could, as soon as I reran the test the second time, it would fail because of locators, right? But of course, that has evolved tremendously. But that's an open source solution that I'm talking about. But if you talk about other solutions that are available today, out of which I have tried few, which is Test Project is something that I've tried and I liked it, right? You need not write a single line of code to use those tools. and that's going to certainly help you uh, put your first step forward in test automation. But while you are exploring these codeless solutions, one thing that you need to understand is that you have to read and reread the documentation that is available from these tools to find the correct usage and as per your fitment, right? It depends. Like, what sort of automation are you having? Do you have APIs? Do you have a desktop app? Or do you have a web app, right? Depending on that, you cannot be lazy while reading the documentation. Yes, you need to hear it loud. You cannot be lazy to read the documentation that is provided by these tools. You have to read and reread. Only then you're going to understand the proper usage. Reach out to their support team for customized support. Don't give up on the tool and move on to the other tool just because a particular tool blocked you somewhere, right? I and my team, we have reached out to those tool support team, and we have received tremendous support. Trust me, folks, these organizations, these solutions are really working hard for the low key no key solution, and help you find the solution, right? And they've also gone ahead and added these problems to their roadmap and ensure that those problems are solved in their future releases. Next is understand the building blocks of test automation. Every time I see anyone getting into test automation, they feel first they need to understand code. That's not the only way. If you are comfortable with coding, you can go that way. But if you're not comfortable with coding, and if that's what is holding you back, right, understand that you can use the codeless solution, but then understand the building blocks of test automation first, because I've seen people misusing the codeless solution also badly, right? First thing, that as soon as you enter the test automation, is that you have to take forward your existing functional testing skills. Test automation is going to complement your existing testing skills. Okay, they are not mutually exclusive. You have to make them work together. You have to take forward that brain, that tester brain of yours, and only then jump into test automation. As soon as people get into test automation, I have seen actually people doing it. I feel as though, if they've ever done testing or not, right? So consciously take forward your functional testing skills. Identify good candidates for automated testing. Testers are really good at it. Developers aren't. Most, not that all developers aren't, but most developers aren't good with those scenarios. So identify those good candidates, pair with your colleague, pair with your developer, or pair up with someone. Or if you cannot pair up with someone, you yourself have to lift yourself up and identify those good candidates for automated testing. I have listed down only a few candidates, like start with the most important business critical scenarios. Tomorrow, if you ever want to show this sort of test automation suite to your colleagues, to your team, or to the stakeholders, or to the client, right? If you start with the most important business critical scenarios, you won them there itself. Like it's like a sixer hit on the first ball. Repetitive and mundane scenarios, we all know, right? As I just mentioned, humans are not good with repetitive work. We get saturated. Those scenarios should certainly be automated. So then you need not worry about it. Time consuming scenarios, like the one that Murray explained, right? Anything which is like, you have to test a particular scenario with, say, thousands of parameters. Certainly don't go and do it yourself. It's such a waste of time. Talking about the building blocks, next comes the element identification, again, which is very important when it comes to test automation. You have to champion identification of locators, okay? And that doesn't need any coding really, right? You don't have to write any code as such, but you need to certainly understand so talking about the web pages here, right? You need to understand how the DOM works, at least, right? You have to raise the bar for yourself. That's how you start getting into technical things. Start with small. Just before this session, Sanjay gave fantastic demos of Selectors Hub. I'm sorry for the typo there. Selectors Hub. And yes, you should certainly use these plugins which will add to your productivity. But before you do that, I would say understand the nitty-gritties of the DOM, understand how element identification works, because what automation really is about, identifying the element and acting on it. That is like, the first two blocks of automation. Now let's talk about the smarter solution. Once you are, once you've understood the DOM and the elements, once you have championed that, like, you don't have to spend time on, oh my God, it's been 30 minutes, you're just still trying to find the element, right? The tools, the codeless solutions will do that for you, but trust me, that breaks intermittently. Although there are many tools that say that they have this auto healing capacity, it works to a certain extent. I don't want to say that it doesn't work at all, but you will face challenges there, and it's always better to champion identification of your elements. Talking about the smarter solution now. Test automation has this underlying rule of the AAA pattern, which is the arrange, act, and assert pattern. So I have taken the definition from Andrew Knight's, who is also fondly known as, or whose Twitter handle is Automation Panda, who is also one of our speakers, by the way. So you have to understand the arrange, act, assert, and pattern. This has nothing to do with coding again, right? Understand the concept really well. What we mean by arrange here is you have to take care of the inputs and targets. If I want to give you an example, I'm going to give a very simple example of a login scenario. Here, you need to ensure in the arrange part that those particular credentials or that users are actually registered with your system. That's going to be as part taken part as of the arrange pattern. So arrange part really. So you can arrange it. I wouldn't say, try to register it via UI. That's like the flakiest solution, and that's also the slowest solution. But to begin with, you can do that as well. But if you can pair up with a developer, if you can pair up with a technical person and ensure that the database is ready with those credentials that you're going to use, then your job is done. Talking about the act, taking the same login scenario, you have to act on the target. What I mean here really is the act part is going to be going to the login page, entering the username, password, and hitting the login button. That is called as the act part here, right? So we are done with the arrange part. We've ensured that the user is registered. Act is logging in with those credentials. And now comes the most important part, which is assert, expected outcomes. Once you hit the login button, you have to verify that the login was successful. Otherwise, that's not called an automated test, by the way, folks, right? Arrange and act is just, that is automation, but that's not an automated test, right? Test will happen only when you verify that the login was successful or unsuccessful. That's called an automated test. If you leave the assert part, arrange and act is useless. You'll have, probably you can just use it to faster the interaction, but you'll have to still manually go and verify that the login worked. I have so many assignments coming in at Axelerant, wherein the framework is fantastic. People have created a page object model and this model, that model. They've used a robot framework, but I don't see any assertion. So that's not a test. That's not a test at all. And assertions have to be impactful. To begin with, start writing assertions. If your test doesn't have an assertion, it's not a test, by the way. I'm sorry, right? It's not a test. It's not an automated test. Automated visual validation testing. Last year, I delivered almost 6 talks on this topic. It's a smarter automated testing solution, because here you do not really have to sit and validate the functionality every time. Let's take the login example again. If so, once you've logged in, right, and what are you going to assert? Probably you'll assert that a username is visible somewhere, and probably, if it's a dashboard or whatever, the landing page is visible in the sense you're just going to assert few elements of it. That doesn't really say that the entire page has loaded correctly. That definitely doesn't validate that. What automated visual validation testing is going to do is, as soon as you go to your login page, first of all, you can verify that the login page looks intact. Okay, you can verify by just using like one line of code, and if you do not want to use code, then there are many plugins also available that help you do that. After you enter the credentials, again you can take a snapshot and verify that the credentials, after entering the credentials, the text field or the form is not disrupted. That also looks correct, right? And then once you hit the login button, you do not have to assert anything else, like, the username is present, some other buttons or some other elements are present. All you have to do is hit the login button and take a snapshot of the whole page, and you're going to compare it with your original baseline. Not only the functionality gets validated in this case, but the UI also gets automatically validated. Hence, I say that if you are getting into test automation, learn about the functional test automation, but fast forward and move to automated visual tests. Again, there I'll say you don't need to worry about writing code or something, because there are tons of config based tools available in the market. Tons, right? All you have to do is give them the URL and they'll do the job for you. And as I mentioned, there are many extensions available with codeless tools, existing codeless tools. Like with Selenium IDE, I know that there's a tool called Applitools. Applitools works very well with Selenium IDE. They have an extension. And add automated visual test to your existing suite with one line. So if you're even minorly comfortable with writing one line of code, it's just like, an example would be like, say, if you're using Cypress, it would be, say, cypress.snapshot. That's it. All you have to do is write sci.snapshot and you have your automated visual validation tests in your existing suite. It's that simple. Next steps. So I have given few sources and references. So I am pointing out to very good sources here, references here, where you need to look at. I'm not going to talk about the how part here, right? How part is for you to explore. I'm giving you the roadmap to deal with your fear with test automation or with misconception with test automation. There's a fantastic course by Andrew Knight again on element locators on Test Automation University. Test Automation University is again one place where you should register if you haven't yet. It's really helping the testing industry, or in fact others as well, to get into test automation. You can try Selectors Hub by Sanjay Kumar, and after you've taken the course of element locators, Selectors Hub is again, it's useful if you want to increase your productivity. There's again a very good blog written by Automation Panda on arrange, act, assert pattern, and you should use this pattern for writing good tests. Learn slow, but learn it the right way. Otherwise, you're just going to end up in that crowd who can write tons of codes, but not automated tests. Codeless solutions, a couple of solutions that I have tried on my own, and that's why I've listed, but there are tons available there. There are many commercial tools available, by the way, because low code, no code is the future. I know many clients who are asking for those solutions. Automated visual validation tools, Backstop.js is free, so you can use it, and it's a config based tool. Percy and Applitools are paid solutions, but you can definitely start with their free accounts. They're not going to charge you for that. Blast off. It's important this weekend you start right from your test automation journey. It's going to be today or never, right? Otherwise, that fear is just going to start piling up even more. I'll share the slides with you so that you have these references. Go ahead and start writing those most important automated tests. It's important you understand you don't have to achieve a certain percentage of automated tests right now when you begin. Even if you have the most important business critical smoke scenarios automated at your own pace, that is a good enough start. That's how everyone starts. That's how I started. Thank you. I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Sweta, for a wonderful session and all the explanation, plus the suggestions which you have given to start with the automation. That was really great. And guys, we are open for questions. So if you have any questions, please ask Sweta, unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can put up the question in the chat box as well.
Shweta, this is Aditya here. Thank you so much for a wonderful session. And I think that fear of coding and that blast off that you actually said at the last was really inspiring. I guess if somebody was part of this conversation and was part of this track and who wants to get into automation, I'm sure they will go immediately into this. On another note, I just want to ask you, with so many coding like White Hat Junior and so much going on for the kids, do you think that coding should always be an option for everybody, including testers, whether they are manual or not?
No, I don't think coding should be an option. And coincidentally, just 2 weeks ago, I was exploring many codeless solutions because one of our clients, big clients, okay, Aditya, not a small client, one of our huge clients in Germany came to us and they told us that we have a team full of manual testers who don't know any coding at all, and we want you to give us a test automation suite which does not involve any coding, because we want our testers to execute those tests on demand. And if you look at these codeless solutions, right, they are beyond just automating tests. They are giving you many integration capabilities to run these tests immediately in your CI and then integrate it with your project or test management software like Jira, X-Ray. Then plus again have integration out of the box. All that I'm talking about, all these features that I'm talking about, Aditya, these are out of the box available, wherein you need not write a single line of code. All you have to do is go to their backend, go to their interface, configure the settings, and then you are done. If you see, what Applitools has done really is, simplifying the solution is always done by great people, right? Coding, there is some sort of, I know people would want to kind of feel good after writing those lines of code, right? But we need to keep reminding ourselves of the objective here. Are we here to write just good code, or are we here to deliver faster and confident releases through automated tests? Now, whether those automated tests are written using code or without code, that should be really, a secondary thing and not the primary objective.
Great. Thank you so much, Shweta. I think that will basically inspire a lot of people to go into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, so I would ask a question. Like, I am a guy who has never gone in the coding, and I have just started this extended Java program by ATA. So I have started attending the classes. I know the logics, but I always have a fear of writing the code. Like, if I can do these things by manual testing, I can take the screenshot and these all things. So what automation is doing, how fast it is doing. So I always like, I can do by manual, why I'm going in automation. So that fear of, there is a fear of coding, and there is a fear of, there is a thing like, I can do by manual testing. So how to get rid of those things?
No, you can certainly do it by manual testing, but we just discussed those reasons, Abhay, right? We are talking, yeah. Usually what happens is, no matter, how late the delivery happens to the QA team, but
Yeah,
it's quite oftenly heard that, QA acts as the bottleneck. They are taking too
yeah,
much time to test, right?
yes,
And we have to do our part. We have to deliver and test it faster and accurately. It's about that accuracy, right? And it's also about, investing your efforts in areas where humans are good at. Instead of just repetitively testing the same thing again and again, as I mentioned, Why don't you invest your time in testing the accessibility of the application, in testing the usability of this application? I have seen websites, I have seen projects which are scrapped off with zero bugs, no defects, but just because, they weren't usable enough. And these are all true examples.
Okay, that was really great. So
It boils down to your conscience, right? Like,
yeah.
do you still feel devalued just because you do not know how to write code? But once you start, delivering it faster, there are several and tons ways to contribute to the project as a tester. But somehow, people are pulled back once they feel that they aren't technically strong enough. But as I just mentioned, I worked with 4 ace developers who didn't know automation at all and who felt that automation is complex, but we collaborated and worked together on that project for a year, and we got a compliment from the client saying that they haven't seen such an automation suite in years.
Okay. Thank you so much for all the answers. And we have one more question here. What is your take on employers who only need experienced automation folks but won't consider candidates who have learned it through online or any other platform, provided from work as well and upgrade skill during that time?
That's a good question, Namita. And I think Angie Jones had once tweeted about it. There's a very good way and an organic way to showcase your automation skills is that create a very enriching GitHub profile for yourself and put in all your automation learnings in GitHub. So that it's easier for people to evaluate your testing skills. At Axelerant also, we do not take in candidates to the technical round unless and until they have gone through the test automation assignment. It's the right way to evaluate people on automation. So create a very good GitHub profile for yourself wherein you have added your code repositories related to test automation.
So actually we are done with time, but we can take up a question. There are 2 questions we can just add up in same. Manual testing is bit tough than development. And then what will be the future of functional testing? Are we heading towards fully automated era, not manual testing?
Well, I don't know what does manual testing is bit tough than development really mean, because that's such a contextual question. If you ask a tester, they would say development is tougher. If you ask a developer, they would say testing is tougher, right? That's completely contextual. But I've always been an advocate of acquiring more and more skills because that is what the IT world in general demands, right? If you are not a learner, I think you're in the wrong space completely. What will be the future of functional testing? See, I think several people have already answered this question several times. Automation testing is there to complement your existing manual and functional testing efforts. It's not here to replace those. It will never replace it, right? You have to be smart enough to invest your time in functional, usability, accessibility testing and leave the repetitive tasks to automated tests. It will never replace functional, manual, or whatever you call it, right? It will never replace it. That can never happen. Yeah. Do you think artificial intelligence, machine learning will come into testing space further down the time? I think, see, there are many tools when we talk about auto healing tests and all, right? And there was one, I think long back around 1 year ago or something, I saw a session from Jason Abin, and there he very well explained the concept of how this machine learning works in test automation. I'll come to that question as well, testing space further down the time and all. It's a very interesting domain for testers to test applications. AI and ML again is like, it's a broad term and it is, I'm sorry to say, but it is, incorrectly used every now and then, right? So let's talk about the first part is testing AI-based applications, right? Now that's a different thing. That's a different domain altogether. And if you want to get into it, you certainly you don't need to like sit and learn any algorithms really related to it. But what you need to do is, start understanding that domain really well, where that AI is being applied. Again, AI is again something which is applied to several domains. So you need to understand that domain very well, how the application is being used in that domain, and then test the AI related to that domain. Now, talking about how AI and ML plays a role into test automation is, so I saw this session from Jason Arbin, as I mentioned, wherein he, interestingly explained that how, say, if it's a e-commerce application, and how that cart icon is really identified by the tool. How that cart icon is identified by the tool, and even if the position change, or the locator changes and all the underlying details of that locator changes, your automated test is not going to fail, because that cart like looking icon has been identified by this AI based tool. So if you talk about AI and ML in test automation, it's more so as of now related with identifying locators smartly.
Thank you so much, Shweta, for taking your time and answering that one. Very insightful, lot of energy, and I would like to thank personally for agreeing to be our speaker. Thanks a lot, Shweta. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Aditya and Selenium Summit for having me today.